Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are back with another episode of Daily Palantir. We have about 2 weeks left, May 8th. So actually less than 2 weeks, about 9 days left until we have Palantir earnings. Very excited for those earnings. It's going to be a really fun earnings, hopefully. I'll have my earnings projections coming out in a few days. Today, we're going to talk about two things on the show. Number one, we're going to talk about the Palantir and Parexel partnership that we didn't get a chance to talk about last week. I thought that was very important in the context of healthcare. We keep seeing Palantir get deals in healthcare, so that's important for us to discuss. And then number two is this Robinhood shareholder question. So basically, Robinhood has this platform that allows people to ask questions to the company before the earnings happens. And I want to go through basically 10 questions today that are the most top voted. I haven't even read the questions, so I'll be reading them in real time as we record this video and then answering and giving my raw thoughts in real time as well. So we'll be basically answering the most important retail shareholder questions, at least the top voted ones today. And then we'll be talking about the partnership with Parexel that I thought was really important for healthcare. A lot to get into. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's start off with a partnership that I thought was pretty important news, and this came out on April 25th. Didn't get a chance last week to cover it, but still very important to discuss. Palantir and Parexel, which is one of the largest clinical research organizations, or CROs, expanded a collaboration to accelerate clinical data delivery and power clinical outcomes for patients. They announced a multi-year strategic partnership. The multi-year is really important there, right? So this is a deep partnership. We don't have numbers yet, but it's a deep partnership that's going to last for a long time to leverage AI to help enhance and accelerate the delivery of safe and effective clinical trials for the world's biopharmaceutical customers. Under the collaboration, Parexel will leverage Palantir's Foundry and AIP, a combination that we're seeing many times, right? AIP and Foundry being used together for the clients that want to have these kind of multi-year partnerships. We saw Coles also do the same thing in Australia. To further power its clinical data platform focused on driving clinical trial efficiency while maintaining the highest level of safety and regulatory rigor. Parexel is the first CRO working with Palantir in this capacity, building on the company's existing collaboration over the past year. Jonathan Saj, the CIO of Parexel, says, "We're thrilled to expand our collaboration with Palantir, a leader in AI, as we build on our application of AI to further improve clinical trial execution and advance our offerings." He also says, leveraging our internal Parexel expertise and our strategic partnership with Palantir, we have novel solutions already in use or at various stages of development that demonstrate our commitment to be a fully digital CRO. Palantir says that, or someone else from Parexel, who's the chief of data and AI, says, Parexel is well positioned to rapidly scale our use of AI to enhance data quality and streamline the clinical trial process to better deliver for our customers and patients. Combining our end-to-end delivery model with Palantir's world-class security, governance, and AI platform will generate strategic insights to inform drug development and accelerate time to market. One of the executives of life science at Palantir says, Parexel has embraced the principles of digital transformation using generative AI at remarkable speed and scale. The company will significantly accelerate its business by untapping the value of data via an ontology constructed within Palantir Foundry and connecting it to the immense power of generative AI and AIP. We are delighted to deepen our exceptional collaboration with Parexel, empowering them to fully leverage the capabilities of AIP and Foundry throughout their clinical processes and business operations. I wanted to read those three quotes because I think it pretty much speaks to why this partnership is so excited. Parexel is a CRO. I don't know the most about clinical research organizations, but my understanding of that is that they have to condense a lot of data to then deliver their clinical trials at scale. And in order to do that, I mean, the most obvious way you could easily or effectively do that is having something like a Palantir Foundry. So this partnership has been going on since the beginning of the year. This is an acceleration and expanded collaboration of the partnership. And what it looks like is a basic bootcamp client that eventually became an actual client on a pilot. And then from that pilot, the expanded collaboration is because the pilot went well. And so Parexel was like, all right, it maybe makes sense to adopt Foundry, structure our data in an ontology, pull data from that ontology on top of AIP, and then be able to derive insights and value from it that allows us to actually do what we need to do. So that's the first thing and the reason I thought this was important. Number two, again, the healthcare partnerships continue to deepen. So Parexel is doing safe and effective clinical trials for biopharmaceutical customers. Those are the customers of Parexel because they're a clinical research organization. And you've got Palantir that has worked with Tampa Bay General, Cleveland Clinic, Policio Gemelli, which is one of the largest hospitals in Italy, one of the best hospitals in the world. I mean, the list goes on and on, the NHS, of all the different partnerships we've done in the context of healthcare. Biopharmaceutical drug discovery, especially the partnership that we have in Novartis, continues to reinforce to me that these partnerships in the clinical trial drug discovery space aren't slowing down. In fact, most people forget we had a partnership back in 2021. I don't know if the partnership even worked out. I mean, we don't hear about them anymore, so maybe it's still there. Maybe it never ended up materializing. But we had a partnership in 2021, December, with DuPont Therapeutics, which was using a particular type of biomolecular way to discover drugs, right? It was a bit risky. They were trying to do different things. But the point is we've been working in the drug discovery space by attaching large amounts of data to Palantir's AI systems and Foundry systems in order to accelerate the drug discovery for a lot of these clients. So now going from DuPont Therapeutics to Novartis, which is the fourth largest pharmaceutical company in the world, or Praxil, one of the largest CROs in the world, makes a lot of sense. And it continues to reinforce my belief that healthcare is going to be one of the largest growing verticals for Palantir. All right, now we're going to go to these questions on Robinhood about Palantir. So again, I haven't read any of these questions. I'm reading them for the first time, and we're going to read them together and see if there's any good questions here that we should be paying attention to deeply. So again, these are like 10 of the top voted questions. So with 781 votes, Santosh asks, are there any merger and acquisition discussions going on? Interesting question. I would argue that on the company buying Palantir side, there's probably no discussions. I don't think Karp wants to sell, and I think Palantir is not a company that acquires. Snowflake acquired 4 companies. Palantir tends to innovate internally. They just don't need to acquire, in my opinion. So I don't think that's going to be any major point of discussion. Skylar says, now that you have successfully gotten to profitability, do you think you will be able to continue growing EPS? Any risks to profitability growth? I think this is a fair question. I do think that the answer is relatively simple. They have $4 billion in cash. That cash pile is going to expand over the coming quarters, which means if they just keep putting it into treasuries, we're getting 5.5% on that money, which is going to almost guarantee that we're going to be profitable via net interest income every single quarter. So I don't think that's the biggest concern, but it's a reasonable question, right, to ask at the end of the day. Evan says, when will Palantir be added to the S&P 500? Now, that's a good question. I don't think we know when we're going to get an answer to that question. But probably, we'll get an answer eventually from the actual S&P committee. It's really not up to Palantir, right? They've done their job in terms of keeping the market cap at a certain level and getting the actual like company to be GAAP profitable for 4 consecutive quarters, and I think 5 at this point. This will be the 6th quarter. So it's really about the committee, and Palantir can't make a decision there. Now, I think the committee is really weighing, right, the institutional ownership of Palantir, because that is the second lowest of all the companies in the S&P 500. So if they were to allow them into the S&P 500, I think the fear is that because it's so retail driven, it's going to be more volatile, and the S&P 500 is trying to like protect against volatility. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully this year. If not this year, I think definitely next year, because it'll just get too big to the point where they can't deny them. But we'll see if that happens. SMCI and Deckers were added last time in March. Okay. Nagrenda says, what is your vision for the next 10 years? Will you emerge as a global leader for AI? What AI products and services can we expect from Palantir in the next 5 years? Thank you. I think it's a fair question. I think we know what their core vision is. They want to become the modern operating system for the enterprise, and AIP is going to play a big role there. I do think they could expand on what that vision does look like more globally. In general, I think I would rather have this question be framed in the context of government and NATO, how they think they could really expand and build Gotham, which is their government product, out for every single Western nation in the world. And I'm sure they'll be asked about that to an extent, given there are some hints that maybe Germany wants to come back for Palantir. But I think the global leader for AI is based on taking the market. That's what Karp wants to do. You have to have a deep understanding of LLMs, the future of LLMs in the contextual nature of business intelligence, which is what Ontology and what Foundry is supposed to be able to provide to an organization. The combination of the two, just like on the deal we just talked about in this video, I think is really the vision for every single company in the world to be using something like a Palantir. And if they can execute against that, I think it can be a Salesforce, Oracle type of company over the next decade. Matthew says, how does your AI strategy differ from your competitors? It's a good question. I think the core thing here, just from a go-to-market, is their boot camps. They're actually providing value. They're not saying, hey, let's take you out to dinner and then discuss pricing. It's like, no. Use it for free. If you like it, then please buy it. So I think that's the first thing. And then number 2 is they're not building an LLM. Snowflake just came out with an LLM. We did a video on the channel talking about if that matters or not, and we'll see over the next coming months. But I think what matters more is the infrastructure to make the LLM actually connect the data, not the LLM itself, right? And so I think their main AI strategy is that they're connecting business intelligence from the ontology in a way that leverages LLMs as a form of computational infrastructure to get answers quickly, as a non-subject matter expert versus building an LLM like GPT or Gemini, right? I don't think that's where a lot of the value ends up being, especially for a company of Palantir size. Like they're not in the business of building LLMs. Mithelsh says, how does Palantir plan to be ahead of its competitors? Go-to-market strategy would be my answer there. Skylar says, where do you anticipate the bulk of both short-term and long-term revenue growth to come from? Again, this is just like from their operations at the end of the day, like the recurring revenue they build as a SaaS business. I think right now short-term revenue is net interest income, but that's not going to last forever. Sebastian says, what's the future looking like? I don't think that's the best answer. Santosh says, is Palantir providing any services to Tesla? They wouldn't answer that question, even though it's a good question, but they probably wouldn't answer it. Sohail says, when will Palantir be positioned to pay out dividends? That's not a good question in my opinion either, because this is a growth company trying to hit an S-curve. Buybacks, dividends to me make no sense right now. They should just win, right? If they can just keep winning, then the stock will appreciate, which will be very good. If you want a dividend stock, there's plenty of dividend stocks out there. Palantir is not the stock I buy to get a dividend. Christian says, is the merge with Oracle a move to compete with AWS, Google, and Azure? If so, what will be unique about it? I think this is a great question. This should be the number one question. That Oracle partnership did not get talked about enough. I think we need to discuss it more. I think we want to get some clarity on what this partnership looks like from a cloud computing hyperscaler perspective. I think it's a good partnership. People from Oracle reached out to me, like, just like random ex-employees, and they said that Oracle doesn't do deals with like, they don't do partnerships like this. So even to them, they were impressed. They're like, what the fuck? Why is Oracle doing a deal with you guys? So I think that was also important, and hopefully Palantir can talk more about that. Last question here, Samuel, will there be a share buyback this year? Again, my answer to this is that we absolutely should not do a share buyback. It makes no sense in my opinion. There's $4 billion that we have in cash that we can put in bonds. The next couple questions are all about Oracle or buyback. So that's why this is the last question. A lot of the questions just end up repeating. We're getting net interest income. We're getting $50 to $70 million a quarter for doing nothing, just keeping that cash there. Either you put the cash into marketing for boot camps, which grows the business, great, or you put it into treasuries. You guarantee EPS growth, or at least stable EPS, and then you continue doing what you have to do from the business side. If we were to buy back stock, this is a $50 billion company. Let's say we authorized $1 billion of buybacks. Let's say we bought all $1 billion and you bought back $1 billion worth of the float. There's 2.18 billion shares outstanding. So what's $1 billion divided by 22, which is a stock price right now? 1 billion divided by, let's do 22.50. We would buy about 44 million shares, which is fine. About 44.4 million shares, which is cool. But does it put a drop in the bucket in terms of how much the float is decreasing? No, because there's 2.1 billion shares outstanding. By the way, the short float on Palantir is now only 4%. It declined another 5% over the past 2 weeks. So only 77 million shares are shorted. So buying back the stock does not materially increase your ownership of the company that substantially. There will be a time when that happens, maybe a decade from now, maybe 5 years from now, where Palantir can do what Google is doing, what Meta is doing, and just buy back a crap ton of stock because they have so much cash they don't know what to do with it. Now's not that time. Now's the time to grow and capture the market, and buying back and financially engineering earnings per share via a buyback for shareholders that won't get any benefit from it. It doesn't make sense to me in the long term. All right, those are my thoughts on the questions that we got for Palantir shareholders. We'll see what happens with Palantir in the future. A bunch more videos today or throughout the week that I'm going to be talking about in terms of my overall thoughts going into earnings. And then May 8th, I'll be live actually with Arnie, I'll be with him in DC. And we'll be covering the entire earnings, and we'll see what we can do. I'm overall bullish for earnings. I think it'll go well, but it depends on the macro and what sentiment is like going into earnings that day. All right, that's it for me. Thank you, everybody, for listening. DailyPalantir.substack.com. Free email newsletter. Please make sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.